Oh boy. Welcome everybody. Pleased to welcome everybody to the candidate forum for City Council for Coronado. My name is Brian Trottier. I helped facilitate this, which means that I did all the emails, all the phone calls, and talked Sean and the library staff into helping us with the live streaming and the video of this event. It will be live streamed, so behave, because you will be on camera and will be heard. We're also going to stream it to YouTube and record it, and then we'll post the link later. So I want to make sure we get started right away. Our moderator tonight is Dr. Carl Luna. Carl is a professor emeritus of political science at Mesa College. He's currently a visiting professor at the University of San Diego. He's also running the Civic Engagement Institute. Carl has been a moderator in political conversations for many years. I won't say how many. A lot. Yeah, a lot. And we're very fortunate that he raised his hand when first requested and said he would do this. So with that, I'll turn things over to Carl. Enjoy yourselves and behave, please. And I do have comment cards. If anybody wants to write a question, come over and get a card and a pen for me over here. Bring it back, and then on the break, we'll take a look at them and see what we want to be able to filter out. Thank you.
Right there. Hello, everybody. Is this going now, or did I just turn it off? No. There we go. Just try to keep that going there. Thank you for coming out tonight. Monday night is often a low energy night. I appreciate the energy you're bringing to the room today. Let us begin with a little overview of the rules of engagement for tonight, because we're given the rules, so everybody's up in context on it. All questions will come from me, the moderator. I've put them together, looking at questions that have been carried by the Democratic Club and looking at things I've seen in the local media. If you have a question you'd like to ask, as Brian said, please put it on a 3x5 card. We'll curate those, and the moderator, at my discretion, I'll try to either combine or synthesize so we maintain germaneness, relevance, and avoid repetition. But do please fill out questions. I'm looking to you for some to cover points that we're not covering up here you'd like to have covered. We're going to have different levels of responses, long responses. I'll give each candidate 2 minutes to respond, followed with a 30-second follow-up if it's necessary. Sometimes the 2 minutes is fine. Sometimes 30 seconds is needed. And also, if it looks like there's a good possibility for another follow-up question, I might throw it out to a 1-minute follow-up question too. We might have, if it pops up, a lightning question, just a yes/no questions will pop up, or a little quick 1-minute question. We're going to begin with a question all the candidates received in advance, which will serve as their opening statements. Then we'll go through as many questions as we can, taking a break 6:45-ish or so, because 2.5 or 2 hours may be a little bit much. Maybe just do a 5-minute, 6-minute break, since we're off a little late. And then when we reach the closing, each candidate will get, depending on our time, if we have 2 minutes for closing, enough time for 2 minutes for a closing with no response to it. So, Tip O'Neill, famous Irish politician, Speaker of the House, once remarked that all politics is local, and local city council races is about as local as you get. This is where democracy really meets the road for the average person. We spend all our time focusing on national politics, but by golly, when your roads are congested, when your toilets don't flush, it's really local that you got to look to. So as we look at these offices, they're all nonpartisan offices, which often comes across as something of a quaint fiction any longer in a somewhat polarized America. I teach my students there are things we tell you that are simply not true, but they sound good. We make you feel good, like your opinion matters. No, your informed opinion matters. If you're not informed, I don't want to know what your opinion is. That's why you get an education. We talk about nonpartisan politics. We say there's no partisan way to fill a pothole. Of course there is. How do you do it? Union labor, market rate labor, free market labor. How are you going to go? Are you going to raise the taxes necessary to do so? So everything within it can have a partisan context to it. People don't like government. You work in local government, you'll discover people love their local government. You try to close down their pool hours, and they are going to be taking up pitchforks on you. It's always the other person's government we don't like. They're the wasteful ones. But my post office, which I like with longer hours at, that becomes a God-given right. So one of your jobs as council members is to working through whatever partisanship may exist, still try to rationally accomplish the needs of the voters of Coronado in the most efficient way possible. They, the voters, are the final judges of this. So this whole forum is to look at how you would address the responsibility of providing for a better Coronado. So the first question that you receive, the Coronado has a council manager system in which the city council and mayor set policies, which are carried out under recommendation by the council appointed city manager. The mayor is a vote on the council, not the chief executive. The city council is the legislative body of the city. Members adopt the laws and policies for local government, appointed city manager, act as administrative heads of city departments and the employees. They define the powers and duties of the appointed officers and employees, adopts a budget to guide the expenditures and revenues of the city, appropriate funds to operate city government. City councils must operate under the federal constitution and law, the California Constitution, existing applicable California state law, and local municipal ordinances, rules of financial management and propriety, and existing contractual obligations. There's a lot you need to do and be aware of. Given these duties and obligations, here comes a question mark. What professional and community service experience, including prior service with the city and in Coronado or elsewhere as applicable, do you have that would make you an effective member of the Coronado City Council? We will begin and work our way down, and then each question I'll write down with one panelist. So we're always starting with a different candidate. We'll begin with candidate John Duncan.
Good evening, and thank you, Dr. Luna. I'm a strong believer in public service and giving back to the community. In 2020, I was appointed to serve on the Coronado Civil Service Commission. I was elected chair of the commission. From 2016 to 2019, I served on the Coronado Bicycle Advisory Committee, which is now the Mobility Committee, including a term as vice chair. This experience has been invaluable in learning about our community, the issues we face regarding transportation, tourism, and how the city operates in regard to hiring, paying, and when necessary, disciplining its employees. I'm also very familiar with how committees and commissions are run, including the Robert's Rules of Order and the Brown Act. I'm a director on the board of directors of the Coronado Historical Association and serve as chair of the Heritage, Investment, and Building Committees. I'm also a candidate dedicated to the safety of our community. I'm a director on the board of directors of the FBI San Diego Citizens Alumni Academy, and I serve as chair of the Governance Committee and the Academy Functions Committee. For my service this year in 2021, I received recognition from the special agent in charge of the FBI stating your dedication is above and beyond, and it's individuals like you who helped the FBI in meeting our mission. I've included my SAC coin as recognition of your excellence and leadership. I attended the Coronado Citizens Police Academy in 2016, as well as the FBI's Citizens Academy in 2017. Further, I volunteered in Coronado for more than a decade, coaching children and serving on multiple boards, Coronado Youth Sports Leagues. I'm also an active Coronado Rotarian. My professional life, I'm an attorney, licensed to practice law in multiple states. I spent 2 decades as a managing partner of a large firm with 12 offices in 10 states and hundreds of attorneys and employees. My position gave me vast experience in managing multi-million dollar budgets, real estate and assets, as well as experience in complex contract, lease, and insurance issues. I look forward to speaking to you tonight further on the issues. Thank you so much.
And I was remiss, I forgot to draw the candidate's attention to our excellent time window here. We'll be holding up your 60-second, 30-second, 15-second, and it's over with sparks. All right, we move to candidate Pili Aloha Estall.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pili Aloha Estall, and I am a 4th generation Coronado resident and member. And I will start with my outside of Coronado experience. I've worked a lot in public policy. I'm pursuing my doctorate in public policy, and I've worked at the Alzheimer's Association, Southern Caregiver Resource Center. So I'm very passionate about adult aging services. And I also work within youth development. Currently, I have my own PR agency and work on national, local campaigns to help better the services that we provide our community through other fundraising or services that that we may not have or people that need support in providing those services for others. Locally, I'm involved in a lot of different boards and committees. So I help with the Coronado Flora Association board and our flower show, as well as our Coronado Schools Foundation. And I also am on the board for our band and choir boosters. I'm very passionate about in Coronado. At that time, I also served as the chair of two Sandag committees, one for 8 years, and I was appointed by both Democrat and Republican chairs of Sandag because they wanted somebody that could take this committee and form it to help spend taxpayer money. We allocated every year at least $4 to $5 million. And I had to get the building industry, in addition to the environmental groups and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, agree on how we should spend it. And so I like to say one of the things I'm very good at is working with everybody to get a consensus opinion. But in addition to my time as an elected official, in my private law practice, I represent public utilities. So it was my job to make sure they were following the California Public Records Act and all the requirements that our city has to follow when you're spending government money, when you're trying to get information to your residents, or for us, it was ratepayers. And I still represent public utilities today. Finally, service to this community. I have I am a member and past president of the Coronado Lions Club, Coronado Junior Women's Club, Coronado Women's Club, and I helped start the 501c3 that runs the Concerts in the Park every summer with Floyd Ross. We established it 12 years ago, and it's still up and running. And I'm on that board, and I volunteer as their general counsel. I look forward to serving you again.
Candidate Marvin Hines.
Good evening, and thank you to the Democratic Club for hosting this candidate forum. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm seeking re-election to the Coronado City Council to continue to focus on basic civic, public safety, infrastructure, and traffic mitigation. The Navy brought me to Coronado in 1988, and I've kept my home here ever since. After completing my active duty career as a Navy explosive ordnance disposal officer, I immersed myself in our community. In addition to having served in City Council, Coronado Planning Commission, the City Response Team Board, and our Street Tree Committee, I remain involved in numerous nonprofit organizations here, such as Rotary, Military Officers Association, our local VFW post, and the Coronado Historical Association, among others. Having served on the council, numerous commissions, and numerous boards of directors, I have the experience needed to effectively be a representative on the City Council. In my time as your council member, I've taken Coronado's issues to the state and national level through participation in the California League of Cities and the National League of Cities Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Federal Advocacy Committee. I've given voice to the border water infrastructure funding needs through an NLC resolution that circulated through the halls of Congress. As the 2023 Vice President for the League of California Cities San Diego Division, I'll be able to further champion Coronado issues in environmental matters and the preservation of our local control. My career of service as an Eagle Scout, a career special operations officer in municipal government, and as your council member provides me with the experience needed to continue to be an effective leader as your council member. My degrees in architecture, mechanical engineering, executive leadership, and legal studies give me a broad background to effectively address matters of municipal government. Coronado is a great place to live. We need to continue to strengthen our community and to address issues in a calm and reasoned manner. I'm ready to continue to serve you on our council, but most importantly, I'm ready to listen to all the sides and reach good decisions to keep Coronado special.
Thank you, candidates. We'll now move to a somewhat more substantive question. What are the top 3 issues for the city in the next 4 years that you see the City Council needing to address? Which would be your priority, and how will your skills or experience help you with the council to address those issues? So what are the top 3 issues? What's your priority, and how does your experience help you address the issues? And we begin with candidate Pili Aloha.
For the top 3 issues, I'm not going to say I'm going to prioritize the 3, but I would definitely say the Tijuana River Valley sewage problem is very, very important. I'm going to say currently e-bikes as well, and also our Sandag housing allocation. And I would say for me, for the first one, for the Tijuana River Valley sewage problem, I've actually worked in quite a bit of campaigns within Mexico. So I was actually endorsed by the president of the Ocean Foundation in Washington, D.C. for my campaign. We worked really heavily on protecting some very, very important natural resources in Mexico. And so for me, working through that international policy is very important to me and really staying on top of it. It's really hard for me to watch seeing our beaches being closed for 3 years and consistently being closed and being a little bit more active in what we can do. I'm known for diligence, and I'm also known for being very active and using citizen voice to help move things forward. And I would say for e-bikes, I've already started conversations just to really understand how we can make this move forward quicker. I can't tell you just when I decided to run, how many people have talked to me about e-bikes and how many near experiences that have happened. And that just is really hard for me to hear. So I really, working with a sense of urgency is really important in those issues. I don't want it to be after the fact of major accidents. So already I've had conversations with the fire department. I just really want to see how we can move this forward. Again, my due diligence is very, very important in my mind. And I'd say for number 3, for the housing, I know we're on appeal, but I definitely, again, I'm working on some heat mapping and really helping our citizens be a little bit more active and be able to have a voice and not waiting until the appeal doesn't come through. So having that technology and having that ability to have all of our voices be heard is really important.
Candidate Carrie Downey.
My 3 issues are the water reclamation project at the golf course, the Tijuana sewage issue, and third, your ability to get information in a timely manner so that you can participate actively and be informed when you do so. So I want to go to the first one. The reason I think the most important issue is re-looking at getting the reclamation project set up on the golf course isn't just because I want to have water to use our golf course. It's because what happens if we don't? Because the water that would be reclaimed not only does it use for the golf course, but it also can be used for our medians. And as you know, the state's drought is getting worse. Aside, water in golf courses with potable water is just not acceptable use. So those of us that are ahead of the game, have a source both for our golf course and for our medians, are going to be that much ahead of everybody else. Additionally, my fear is, what if we don't? What else would people want to do on that land? And we know we're not going to like it, whether it's a hotel or more, big housing units. So we should be acting now when we can. Second is the sewage. I agree with Pili Aloha. We need to act on it. We need to be, and we have been. I don't want to suggest the city has not. They've been as aggressive as they can, but we need to keep moving forward. But the third issue I want to talk about is, so many times through my terms on this council and most recently, enough citizens don't get the word something important is getting on agenda until it's too late. That's because under California law, you only have to put a notice with 4 days to give people the knowledge. I'm going to suggest there are ways we can do that better. I think we need to be able to let everybody know when an issue is percolating. So I want another place on our website for people to go and follow issues they care about, not just next day's agenda. Thank you.
Candidate Marvin Hines.
Thank you. Top 3 issues. Number 1 for Coronado is underground infrastructure, and it's the Parker Pump Station and Country Club. That hands down is the most important thing for this city in the next 2 years. If that pump station fails, we have 280 houses that will be unlivable. The city just let the contract to renovate that. It'll probably take us about 2 years to get that done, but that is the thing that we have got to keep our eye on. Underground infrastructure in general is something we have to work on, because we have a lot of 100-year-old pipes and things in this town, and the seawater that comes in doesn't help them at all. But the pump station in Country Club is the number 1 thing. Number 2, right behind that, I would put environmental issues. And one of those is the recycled water facility on the golf course. Carrie Downey got it exactly right. The state at some point is very likely to prohibit the use of potable water on medians and parks and golf courses. Some of you who live in the Keys know that 6 years ago, when the state ordered the cities to not use potable water on medians, we had to destroy the median in Coronado Keys Boulevard. And it's just now coming back. That'll get worse the next time. In the environment category also, though, I think is the Tijuana sewage. We as a city cannot do a lot of action on that, but we need to keep pressure on the federal government for more money. We're still about $100 million short of meeting the project goals over the next 8 to 10 years there to get that completely finished. The last item, the third item, and maybe the most important item, but one that is a long-term issue, is local control. The arena housing numbers is a good example of groups outside of Coronado trying to tell Coronado how to work on this. And so we got to work on that. How am I qualified to help? I have a mechanical engineering degree that can help with the underground infrastructure. I'm on the environment committee of the National League of Cities, which can help with the environment issues. And on local control, I just finished a degree in legal studies, so I understand a little more about the law. Not as much as my attorney colleagues, but a little more.
Candidate John Duncan.
Thank you so much. The top issues for me, one is, almost every single candidate that's ever run for office in the history of Coronado has run on, let's preserve Coronado's small town charm, its historic charm, and let's keep Coronado special. But the real question is, what does that mean to you? And what are you really going to do about it? This is an important issue for me. I've enjoyed my time on the Coronado Historical Association, trying to add a real world positive change in how we can get things done. And one example, recently you may have seen the issues with the La Avenida project. There were two issues, the upstairs issue and the downstairs issue. But at times the Coronado Historical Association has kind of put itself in a position of opposing everything. And for me, it was, well, what do you want done with this building? Maybe we tell the developer what we want, and then maybe they'll do it. And we did meet with David Spatafor. We did tell him what we wanted with the cupola and the roof tile, and he did agree to do it. And then I said, well, if he does what we want, maybe we should support him and say, good job and thank you, and try to be a reasonable person who can work on things. To cut to the chase in regard to what you can do on city council, the Orange Avenue specific plan probably needs to be re-looked at, redone, and enacted into law as a binding document, which I actually think it already is. Moving on to the second issue, yes, the border sewage issue is absolutely a huge issue. We need to work with our regional partners and move on past the partisan dispute about whether we should have been part of the lawsuit with IB or just given them some money or lobbied in DC. We really need to work with our local governments and ensure the remainder of the funding necessary gets allocated, because the EPA says we still need more than $100 million. And finally, local control encompasses almost everything from the Kays Master Park Plan to what's going to happen with the project on the port that's proposed and the housing allocation. I feel I'm well suited to work on local control issues, understand the issues, and work extremely hard. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Let's go for, as a matter of fact, this is we're going through fairly quickly with things, and you're sticking with time, which is great. So I'm going to reward you. Let's do a follow-up to that question. If you want to add more to your top three, or there's one in particular you want to elaborate on, or your qualifications that differentiate you from other members of the candidates for achieving your goal, and I'll give you a minute for that one. And we can begin with candidate Pili Aloha Estal.
And I'm actually going to agree with Carrie. I think being able to have more interaction from our community is very, very important. I'm passionate about public policy. I'm passionate about the process. I actually started already working on heat mapping, so it gives us an ability to be able to interact with the issues coming ahead, whether that's going to be through the city or through whatever forum we can do within our community. I think it's really important. So when things come up and we're not feeling like we can be active and go to every single meeting, how do we maintain that ability? But heat mapping is very, very, very important. It gives you 24/7 ability to stay on top of the topics. So I do feel that that's something that I've been researching, understanding, really trying to understand other cities, people who've used it effectively, and making sure that that could be something we could use.
Thank you, candidate Carrie Downey.
I didn't get a chance to add why I'm best suited to answer my 3 criteria, so thank you for the time. The first thing is all of the work I've done in the government. I've worked for the federal government, I've worked for state agencies, and I've worked for the city of Coronado. And at all times, trying to find the answer was what was necessary, not arguing about who said or who was right or the better way to do it. And not only at the EWG, the Energy or the Environmental Mitigation Program Working Group, but at the Energy Working Group with Sandag, I got jurisdictions, again, blue and red, mayors, to agree on what could be energy policy for our region. That's what you do. You go, as John mentioned, you go and figure out what you want and you get them to help you agree with you. My experience, I've done that in all levels and I will keep doing that. I've gotten the council to change their own policies when I explained to them, these would be good and this is what the citizens want. So I think that's the best way we can resolve these.
Candidate Marvin Hines.
Thank you, Dr. Luna. I want to dive deeper on a subject that probably isn't the most popular, but is the one that Dr. Luna started with. What is the point of local government? To keep your streets clean, your public safety, and to keep the city running. And I'm going to go back to underground infrastructure. We have got to make sure that the wastewater leaves Coronado, or else it won't be a very nice place to stay. My mechanical engineering degree helps me be ready to help with that. I'm currently your representative to the Metro Wastewater Joint Powers Authority. That's what Coronado joins. That is the people that take the waste when we push it across the bay. So I think I understand as much as anybody does on the council about the pipes and the things underground. We need to get those fixed. That is the most important thing for this community right now, or else it's not going to be a very special place.
Thank you. And candidate John Duncan.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Couple quick points on things we've touched on tonight. One, in regard to the water reclamation plant on the golf course, that would be an incredible project, and I hope we can get it done. It is in a lawsuit right now, which makes it very difficult. And I mean, I'm for being honest and telling you exactly what's going on. The candidates are right. The citizens of this town want more information and more communication. I hear that complaint constantly. Also, the estimates for doing that plant, my understanding, have come in at 400% what they originally were estimating. So hopefully we can work it out. One other issue I want to touch on briefly, the testing, the new water quality test. It relates to the sewage issue. It came back that our beaches were constantly being shut down during the summer. And one thing that I thought was good, regardless of how you feel about that test, one thing that I thought was wonderful is that Imperial Beach and Coronado got together and decided to work with the county on trying to fix the situation and come up with something that really works. However, I'm very unhappy that the county has responded by just putting up warning signs and never closing the beaches, even when it fails the old test. I do not want my kids going in when it's extremely polluted and dangerous. So this needs to be worked on and resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Now we have a question from the audience. This will begin with candidate Carrie Downey. How do you intend to preserve the small businesses that have been here for years in Coronado, but are struggling to compete with both rising rents and large franchises in competition? I'll repeat, how do you plan to preserve small businesses that have been struggling with rising rents and large franchises?
That is a great question. I, as a small business owner for 22 years, I have been a part of the Chamber of Commerce trying to look at what we can do. I promoted Small Business Saturday, and I do my best to do shopping when I can at our businesses in Coronado. That's not going to be enough. Problem is, and the example is the expansion that got rid of the Cotier furniture store. Some small business that managed to survive COVID, the recession, and got left out, lost their lease because the new owner wanted to expand and make large restaurants. We have very little control, and we shouldn't tell people who own a business who they can rent to or not rent to, but we can definitely talk about how big we want businesses, what square footage, what limits. And that could possibly be in a discussion of updating the Orange Avenue specific plan. But there isn't much we can do to tell a landlord how much rent to charge or what business to rent to. What we can do as best as we can is trying to make the rules to be in Coronado fit the mold that we want to have for the businesses that we have here. One of the things that the city has the opportunity to do is occasionally do grants. We saw how successful we were during COVID when we offered some opportunities for the businesses that needed some help trying to make payroll or trying to get supplies. So I'm not suggesting we hand out taxpayer money willy-nilly, but we can try and figure out, is there something that the city could look at doing? We partnered with small businesses and it helped. So what other ways can the city itself partner? And so we'll have to look at that. Finally, I think we're going to need to decide what kind of small businesses work for us, because it's us, the year-round residents, need to be supporting the small businesses. That's the problem. A lot of them we have 2 hardware stores. We managed to do that. So we need to shop there more, and we need to be aware of that. So again, more information. What can you be doing for those businesses? Thank you.
Candidate Marvin Hines.
Thank you, Carrie. The role of government in business is limited. Our local government sets the stage, creates a nice environment, creates the opportunities, but in our society, the government does not run businesses. It's up to the individual business owners to try to find that winning formula and to try to find something that will be supported and will make them money. So the city has a role in that. One thing that we did in the last 2 years was provide loans during COVID, a bridge loan to quickly help our businesses while some of those federal programs came on. And we actually made 0 interest loans. Most of the businesses are in the process of paying those back now, but we gave them a long time to make that easy. We didn't give away your money. We didn't do grants, but we did try to use your taxpayers' money to help keep our businesses afloat. The other thing the city can do is make the environment something that customers find attractive and appealing. We can do that by improving sidewalks, by making sure that the traffic moves along and there's open parking spaces. And so things like that we can do, and we can keep working on that. The Orange Avenue specific plan has been mentioned as something that helps us in that regard. Perhaps it could be tweaked, but it's still a very good document that helps guide us in making sure that we provide opportunities for a variety of businesses. And it targets a variety of businesses and provides different requirements there. So the role of our government is to set the stage for our businesses so that they can do a good job, but it's not to tell them what business they should be in or how they should do that business. And it's a challenge in these days to find that business. The bottom line, though, as Carrie said, is if we want businesses in Coronado, we need to shop local and support those businesses, because that's really what's going to keep them here.
Candidate John Duncan. Well, I wanted to ask the panelists, because we only have the 2 mics. I can either take a mic and bring it down, or Marvin, you're getting your steps in, so no extra fee for the aerobics. All right, candidate John Duncan.
What are we talking about again? No, I'm just kidding. So thank you very much. In regard to helping the businesses, I think City Council did a fine job during COVID, but we're talking about moving forward and what are we going to do? To me, one issue that has not been talked about tonight at all is relinquishment of our highways and our main thoroughfares from Caltrans to Coronado. That is a very important thing to have happened. It's been being worked on for a couple of years now. There have been a couple of hiccups, right? Because Coronado wanted to get control of those roads to do things like beautify them, which would help businesses, increase safety measures, potentially crosswalks and other things that could really help out our town and make it more user-friendly, not just for the businesses, but the pedestrians. Unfortunately, it turned out sort of at the last minute that it didn't pass the state legislature, but another twist came to be, which is the twist that the Navy wanted to control. And we'd really be trading Caltrans for the Navy in regard to the supervision of these roads. So that's a project that's ongoing and currently being worked on. I think that'd be a perfect project for me to work on. I love difficult projects. 60 seconds? Outstanding. So let me keep going with business then. Tourism is an issue that we have to balance in regard to also keep businesses profitable. Prior to COVID, I think we were reaching a critical mass where tourism was starting to overrun the town a bit. Then COVID hit and we went the opposite direction. And again, I think City Council did a good job trying to help get us through that. Now we really need to watch if we're going to hit that critical mass again and when we're going to hit it. Because as much as we want to help the businesses, we have to be very careful that we don't overrun this entire town and it becomes not the place that we all want to be. But again, I go to Chamber of Commerce meetings and I try to listen to what the businesses really want. We don't necessarily need to make up what projects we can work on for them. They can tell us what can help them and we can try to do it. However, obviously, we do not control rents on private property in this town. It is a sad thing and a very tough thing, but that is not something that the Coronado City Council can control. Thank you.
Candidate Pili Aloha. Estall, excuse me. Fell asleep up here.
I definitely agree with Carrie, doing kind of your small business Saturdays, small business days that you can support. I work a lot on fundraising events. We collaborate with our local businesses. That's very, very important, from any kind of fundraising event we do to just local meetings that you can have, and really supporting that is super, super important. I worked on a for women business event where we did fundraising, but collaborated all the women-owned businesses in town. So just kind of working together and to really give awareness about what's available. Obviously with Amazon, a lot of people shop on Amazon. So trying to find creative ways to give incentives to have people be here and working with our local businesses. I have actually talked to quite a few businesses about helping them put stuff online to give things accessibility to online for some businesses that need that extra help when there's not as much traffic, but really finding creative ways to support our businesses, whether it's they have promotional events and working with our chamber to help educate everybody what's available in our own community, because there's a lot actually, and sometimes we forget, and we're so used to hitting that ship now. So
Thank you. Does any candidate desire a 30-second follow-up, or can we move to the next question? All right. Oh, right. We'll start with Carrie Downing. We'll do 30 seconds through, and then we'll go to the next question.
I appreciate John bringing up relinquishment. Although everything's stalled because the Navy decided they wanted to be in charge, so we don't prevent people going off the base, we have opportunities to continue negotiating, and one of them may be we work out the MOU. So anything that is just beautification that doesn't go into the roadway could be approved by us, and it would take something higher. That is exactly how we can help the business community. The CTID came to the city asking, they gave specific that they were recommending would improve shopping and walking down Orange Street, including matching street furniture, better lighting so people could stay longer at night. I think now that we have all these restaurants, that would help. And so I definitely think we should push that to make it better.
Candidate Marvin Hines.
Thank you. I also wanted to follow on relinquishment. We did a couple studies, or the city commissioned a couple studies. One of them was with Point Loma Nazarene University, which did an economic study. And they estimated that relinquishment could gain $17 million a year for Coronado. I'm not sure I completely accept that, but their point was that if we got control of the roads, it could have a very positive economic impact because of the things we could do to help the businesses and to help business in town. And so I think John had a great point there.
And candidate John Duncan.
Thank you. In addition to what I was saying about the public safety features and some of the business features, relinquishment gives you quite a bit of power in regard to fixing things that maybe are eyesores in this town. You might look at some of the medians or some of the entrance around the shores and things like that. Having this type of control really does give Coronado control. And I'll tell you right now, it is incredibly hard to maintain control in this town with the things that the state legislature is trying to take away regarding zoning and sandag. It's tough. When we can get local control, we must fight for it, even on things that may seem small. Thank you.
Candidate, excuse me there, Pili Aloha Estall.
I agree, local control. There's a lot of questions I've had lately since I decided to run, and just really understanding what we do have in local control and where we can improve on those areas. But going back to our small businesses, I actually had the privilege of meeting with our library director today at down at City Hall. And what I really found fascinating in some of the topics we talked about is how much this room is being utilized sitting here, which is amazing. And we talked about opportunities we're bringing in amazing individuals, music, events, authors, and how can we partner that with our local businesses, making sure that, okay, have dinner before. And there's a lot of things you can do creatively to really support that and just that positive kind of environment that we're bringing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we move to a question that you guys were just kind of touching on. We have a question on traffic relinquishment. So you can follow up with that more than deal with traffic in general. What should the city do to deal with ever increasing amounts of traffic in Coronado? I mean, I can remember the tunnel idea that was brought up and a variety of others. Maybe we need dirigibles to move things around town. In dealing with traffic, do you believe the city should continue to pursue relinquishment of state routes? What, if anything, should the city do to improve bicycle, car, pedestrian safety, especially given the proliferation of e-bikes? And I believe we begin with candidate Marvin Hines.
Thank you. Well, traffic, if you look back in the Eagle Journal in the history, you'll see that traffic was an issue in elections in the 1950s. So I have to say, I can't tell you I'm going to solve traffic. But we can do some things. And I think relinquishment is one of those things that will help us. And I think we have a road to get there. It is a little bit arduous. And we did a lot of due diligence on the city council to determine the cost of maintaining the roads, to determine how much money the state was willing to give us and what the benefits would be. And it made sense all the way around to most of us, at least. And so I think that's one of the things. The second thing that we have to be aware of is separating pedestrians, bicycles, and cars is the way you keep each of the three safest. And so where we can, it is best to have pedestrians on a pedestrian route, like a sidewalk, bicycles in a bicycle lane, and cars in the road. And so that we've been trying to add bicycle lanes around the city, maybe not popular with everybody, but it's part of trying to keep everybody safe. E-bikes propose a little bit of a challenge there because they are a kind of a super bicycle that's almost a car. And so we have got to work on that. And the city has convened a commission of staff members to study and figure out what we can do in the way of public education, in the way of engineering changes to try to help get ahead of the e-bike problem. But the biggest thing there on traffic is keeping those three separate as much as we can. And I think that's the way you keep them safest.
Candidate John Duncan.
Over here, Mark.
Thank you, sir. So e-bikes, that is an intense issue that obviously when you see three kids on one e-bike going 20 miles an hour without helmets, it's scary. I have three 17-year-olds and a 20-year-old, and it's a difficult situation. It is, Marvin was saying, the city is convening and looking at issuing a potential safety plan. But for me, we also need to expand our horizons and make sure we look at what other jurisdictions are doing. The city of Carlsbad recently declared a state of emergency. They're going to renew on a monthly basis to try to come up with solutions in regard to the dangers of e-bikes. Look, I like the bike. I like to ride a bike, but we know people are going to be seriously injured, and we need to stay focused on it with an open mind. I'm very interested to see what the city of Carlsbad does. A few other ideas in regard to traffic. Well, I firmly agree with the concept that we need to be fiscally conservative with your money. That's what the city of Coronado's money is. It's your money. We have enough money, and we have been shepherded through COVID with our budgets in a pretty excellent way. If there's a project that comes up that we need to try, we need to try it. I'm for considering extension of the summer shuttle and seeing if it's something that we could try and test and see if it's really used and has the ridership to justify it. It certainly could help with traffic. Orange Avenue traffic can be ridiculous, sitting at 10th and Orange for 10 minutes. There's things that can be done with relinquishment, as we mentioned, about working on better control and timing of the lights as well. But those are really the main thing. But this is a good time to mention something else that's important to me. How often or how long are the citizens going to keep saying they would like a little bit more enforcement on the rules that we do have? Okay, this doesn't mean draconian enforcement or brutal tickets every time. But I find that most people would like a little bit of suppression periodically in regard to bikes being ridden fast on the sidewalks on Orange Avenue. That doesn't seem like a hard stretch to get that done and increased. Thank you.
Candidate Pili Aloha Estal.
Thank you, Jen. I definitely agree with the summer shuttle. I also have had quite a few talks with individuals about bringing back our summer shuttle and having it year round, as well as our trolley, kind of the old trolley, maybe making one that's Coronado based. It's a little bit easier to get on and off, just something that can bring people around, that gets you from town and back, and then also down to the Cays. So we've talked about that just to help ease up traffic within town. Obviously looking at groups, we've talked about this before. I know Carrie and I, the last forum we were at, they were talking about the type of tourism that you bring in, where it's more what I call your convention groups, which I've worked on. And just really taking a look at how we can provide transportation, even what I call like senior transportation. There's a lot you can do to be creative. As you said, traffic's been a conversation and congestion for a long time. So since it's been a conversation for a long time, does that mean maybe we haven't looked at everything, and we really need to take a serious look at what the options are? I'm passionate about studying other cities and what they do and what works, from e-bikes to congestion. So really taking a look and doing our due diligence.
Candidate Carrie Downey.
There are still things we can do. One of the things I was proud of, it took a while and many citizens weren't quite sure at the beginning whether that roundabout on Pomona was going to work. It has. It does everything we wanted to do. It slowed people down. It made a safe place for kids to cross. So we need to be open to doing that other places. Second thing is, when I was on Sandag and even after, I continued to push, when are we going to have a carpool lane on the bridge? And at the time, we were told we couldn't do that. They were very interested in carpool lanes. We couldn't do that till they solved the carpool lane on the S curve on the 5. Once they could carry the carpool lane all the way down, they would love to do that. That was one of the issues. It broke up there and doesn't pick up till you're further down. So that would be something I'd push to see. How hard is it going to be to get a carpool lane on the S curve? Secondly, separating bikes, pedestrian, and cars. Absolutely, Marv had it right. One of the things that actually we can be watching, the city of San Diego just started a pilot program for geo-gating electric bikes. That means they're going to be outfitted, although I think they already are, but they'll be outfitted with a GPS that can be, at this point, the technology is there. It can prevent the bike from getting on a sidewalk. And we have a nice small town, unlike San Diego. They can only do a portion of it because it's such a big community. We could do that very easily. So I think we watch the study, see how it goes. Right now, ongoing, there's 2 places, San Diego and another one in the state of Washington. But I think that's something we can at least get them off the sidewalks. And if we're doing that, it may help us get other bikes off the sidewalk once they realize, and we'll teach that, because education, as somebody mentioned, is really the key with e-bikes, both for safety and then having to deconflict the conflict. And then the last thing is, Lowe's taught us how to do this. They've had a shuttle for their residents that come to stay with them. They don't drive their cars. They have a shuttle that takes them into town for everything. I think we need to come up with that, whether you call it a shuttle or whatever we want to call it, is just for point to point. I think we need to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. 30-second follow-up. Well, let's start with actually candidate Marvin Hines.
Okay.
And what's the question?
Just to continue this one. If you had any extra
Okay,
you wanted to add.
okay.
And you don't have to say anything if you don't want, just pass the mic down. But 30 seconds more on traffic, if there's something you wanted to comment on.
Traffic, yes. Well, we talked about relinquishment a little bit, and one of the key things in my mind about relinquishment is the Navy, as was mentioned, has a little objection, and they're concerned that we will somehow impede their access down 3rd and 4th to the base. And I think we actually can help them get better access. And so we just have to sit down and talk through that and make sure that we reach the right conclusion there, because we need the Navy on our side here. And I think my Navy background can help me do that for us.
Candidate John Duncan, 30 seconds.
Thank you. Obviously, working with the Navy is huge in regard to traffic. However, it's my understanding, talking with many people involved with the Navy, is that there's no way they will give up control of 3rd and 4th. but they will issue or agree or potentially concede to the takeover by Coronado, relinquishment, in other words, of Orange Avenue and of other parts of this town. And frankly, that would be a huge step forward. If we can hit the jackpot, as Marv was saying, and get third and fourth, other than that's incredible. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's get something done. Thank you.
Candidate Pili Aloha Estall.
I'm going to agree with the relinquishment package. I think that's really going to be a big step forward for us. And I'm going to reiterate again, that traffic has been a problem for a long time. And I'm not saying there's a perfect magic wand, but I think we can do a little bit better at really visiting what the options are and what we can do and looking at other cities to help us make smart decisions. So moving forward.
Candidate Carrie Downey.
Many of you may not know, but the federal government actually owns the land between the traffic light we now have at the new opening, or it's right to the left of the new opening of the Hotel Del, through the two bases. Because what people don't know is the Caltrans actually has a encroachment allowed by the federal government, but the federal government owned all that. That's why there was bases on both sides of the street. So to suggest they don't have control already, they actually do have so much of control. But we worked with them to develop how to do the timers on Orange Avenue. We worked with them when we were going to put up the traffic light on 4th and Alameda. So if we can work with them, I think we can make the changes we need. It's in their benefit that all traffic works well. Thank you.
And I'm going to swap up directions so our two candidates on the end can take turns passing the mic. So we're going to start off with Marvin Hines on this one.
Yeah, oh, cool.
And we'll do this question. I'm going to take a little break. This one was already brought up by several of you talking about it. Facilities. I think Balboa Park is like $250,000 behind in its upkeep and maintenance. Many cities have their crown jewels and they just don't take care of them. They get tarnished over time. They fall out of their settings, and then it costs you a lot more to fix it. So the city of Coronado manages a number of important facilities used by residents, from the golf course and recreation center to the Spreckles Center to the Coronado Library. Well, let's use the library as an example, since we're here, of how you see the city's role in maintaining and improving public facilities for the good of Coronado residents. The library, in particular, the Wind Room, serves as the center of Coronado's community engagement. It's basically our kitchen table where we come together for debates. It's our living room where we get to have cultural entertainment and educational events. Do you support proposals for the renovation and expansion of the Wind Room, renovation and or expansion, to provide Coronado with a state-of-the-art public meeting space to serve the cultural, civic engagement needs of our community for decades to come? Full disclosure, I am the president of the Friends of the Library, and my daughter's a librarian here. And we begin with candidate Marvin Hines.
Thank you, Dr. Luna. Coronado is very fortunate in that prior city councils took great advantage of state law to do a lot of renovation and a lot of improvement to our above ground infrastructure. And we have a lot of nice buildings, the Spreckles Center being the most recent being built, but the vast majority of our buildings are relatively new and in relatively good condition. Probably the most critical above ground infrastructure items for the city are the 2 fire stations, which will have to be replaced in the next 10 years. But the Wind Room was asked about particularly. The Wind Room is a room that needs some improvements. As we all know, it's a little hard to see things across the people's heads sometimes, and the acoustics and the lighting isn't perfect. So I fully support making some improvements here. The council got some plans about a year ago now, I guess, that were $8 million worth of improvements. Given the critical nature of the Parker pump station and some of the other updates, that was a lot of money for the council to commit to something that wasn't absolutely essential to the running of the city. And so Councilmember Tanaka and I have the privilege of being on a subcommittee looking at what the right level of improvements are here. And I'm confident that we'll go back to the council recommending improvements. We just don't know exactly what improvements we'll be able to recommend now and what that price point will be that's reasonable with all the other things going on in our infrastructure in the city. But the other thing to point out there is you mentioned the Wind Room and highlighted that, Dr. Luna. We have a number of other great facilities here that are available, such as the Grand Room and the Spreckles Center, the Nautilus analyst room in the community center, the boathouse there. And so there's a lot of places that our community groups can meet. And part of this may just be a matter of some policy changes to make it easier for the community groups to get in there at an appropriate price point or none. So that we use the facilities we have before we spend a lot of money changing radically the facilities that we don't need to change maybe.
Candidate Carrie Downey.
If there was ever a question I was waiting for. All right, let me back up. The reason Marv hit it at the very end, it is the cost. When we built the Spreckle Center, which I was a huge supporter of, did everything possible to get that built, and we decided how we were going to price it, I said, oh, well, you have to have one free room, just like we did the Win Room, because that's why this room is used a lot, folks. Why would you use the most decrepit of all the rooms when you could be in the Nautilus room with views galore? It's because it's free, people. And when I went to the city council and pointed that out, everybody was like, oh, really? This is the only, no, duh. So in order to appease me, because I would not approve the funding plan for that building, they gave a new free room down at the boathouse. It's a great room, used it many times, but it does not have the access to walk that this one does, although it does have great parking. So I'm hyping it for you, but it is absolutely a policy change, one I argued for voraciously for years. And I will tell you, when people ask, he'll give us the question, what's the first thing that we want to do when we get elected? That's it. Relook at how we fund our places to get them more used the way we want them used. It was just people being ignorant, not realizing it was the money, dumb. They ask, what is it? It's not the economy, it was money, stupid. So that is how I fix that problem. Now, why would, and the $8 million really bothered me, and I tried to explain it. I was on the committee, so I do apologize, Dr. Luna. I was on the library board for a while. I did not support this because that $8 million was turning this into some kind of visual arts thing. I'm sorry, I support the arts. There are so many places. I helped fund the gallery that we have now hanging up in the wonderful community center. I was on the board of the Women's Club back then and talked them into giving 20 grand to help build that thing so we could have places for art. This is for the community to do lots of things in. It is not an art venue, and we do not need to pay to have more art venues. Use the ones we have. Keep this one usable for everybody. Don't take out the park, by the way. That's part of the cost. Taking all that out to expand this. I'm sorry. I want to make this a better room. I want acoustics better. I want visual better, but I want to make sure it's available for everybody to use. Thank you. Sorry. That's just my pet peeve. I'm sorry.
Please hold all applause till the end unless you applause for everybody. Candidate Pili Aloha Astall.
Thank you, Carrie. I actually had the privilege to talk about the Win Room quite a bit today. And I think when I was asked to be a part of the senior committee and really look at what we can use and utilize our other spaces here in Coronado, I was really taking a look at that. I consider the Win Room, honestly, the heartbeat of our community, and people realize that how important this room is. So of course, upgrades are very, very important, but also the free. I mean, we have the most easy management system here that could be utilized over there. I mean, it's almost a no-brainer. As we update here, we use those rooms there, and then we start to bring in that whole kind of same vibe throughout this entire block. It's a really, really special location. It's central to everything. We really just need to jump in and utilize it more.
Candidate John Duncan.
Glad I didn't go after Carrie. So to me, I look at an asset like the Win Room really in a couple different ways. One is for all of our assets to maintain them, we have to maintain them. So you can't let them, become decrepit and start to fall apart. After that, you look at it in a different way, which is whether or not you want to improve it. For me, when I look at a project like the Win Room, one thing which I think we do have to ensure that we stay ahead of the game with is keeping the technology up to speed so it can be fully used. People bring their computers, their new technology, it's changing constantly. And if they can't use it here, it really limits the use of it, okay? When you get to much larger projects, I'll be completely forthright with you. The larger projects, we have to look at in a bigger scheme in regard to other projects that the city needs. If you go and you talk to a sergeant or a detective in our police department, they're not really happy with the state of the police department facilities declining. That's something that we don't really see or talk about, okay? We need to look at that and think about it. As Marv mentioned, the fire stations, that's a huge issue. But when you balance something like should we have an ambulance in the case, which we don't have, and is pretty far from every other ambulance? Or should we build the visual arts center? Okay, I'm going to vote for the ambulance in that situation. I agree it's not all one or the other, and Coronado is in good fiscal shape, as I say, but it's hard just to always say, yes, I'll go with the new biggest project without ensuring looking at what we have and what we need for public safety. And public safety and giving those people that serve our community the proper resources is really a big issue for me and one of the reasons that I'm running. Thank you.
All right, let's take a 6 to 7 minute break. We'll reconvene at 7:02 and 23 seconds. Please be back in your seats by then. Thank you.
Or we could just all agree that's all we got. I thought we did pretty good.
14 more questions.
I thought we did all right.
No, not that bad.
We try to answer them all up front.
Yeah.
Then they come to those like four.
I know.
Here we go.
You really feel very
You're right. I mean, the both of them. I freaking hear about it. Just no one is.
You can use the school. You can use the school so easily. So easily and do
All right, that's actually good.
It's really making sense.
Years ago, when multimedia and computer technologies was a relatively new thing, I had to do a presentation before all of the boards of the community colleges in the region. We had all the CFOs and EOs in it. We're down at the Hilton. And I had this computer thing going, took us hours to get it going. And then when we were ready to do our spot, everything crashed. Turned out somebody kicked out a plug. And while they were trying to figure that out, I was doing bunny ears across the screen. So are we good? Good, because I was going to start singing and we don't want that. But you never have dead air. That's the first thing. All right, we're going to start with an audience question. And this will begin with candidate Pili Aloha Stahl, work our way down with the question. Wrong question. That's where it went. The member of the audience was saying you're hearing the term local control used quite a bit. Unfortunately, it seems to be used to imply that the Coronado doesn't like what is being directed by the state or Sandag. Coronado should refuse. If Coronado does have to accept, no, that's a different component. How do you define local control? Who are we looking for local control from? And how would you push the city council to take more local control?
Great question. I actually have been researching it quite a bit to understand where do we have local control? What are opportunities to have local control and what can that look like? And we always say there's not a magic wand in policy. And obviously if it's state controlled, you really have to take a look at the budget and how can that better you in managing the budget. I'll take perfect example is our, it just slipped my mind is I was just met with utilities today and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to probably refer it and then I'll come back to it. But because we had control of our street sweeping, they actually now have a monopoly on street sweeping. And so street sweeping now is being astronomically so high, but because we control our own street sweepers, we're able to stay below budget. But it just really taking a look. Those aren't just always situations that are going to happen. And we don't always know when one company is going to take over all of them, but really just making sure, are we looking at all those opportunities? Have we really dove into that and just doing our due diligence?
It goes down to John Duncan, candidate John Duncan.
Thank you, sir. So local control does definitely 100%, in my opinion, does not mean doing what the state or regional bodies say we should do. So that definitely was a misimpression if that came across. What it means is to work as hard as you can in and out of the political and legal system to try to maintain as much control as we can for our city. We've been controlling many things, and some of the things we haven't been controlling, such as the roads, we're seeking relinquishment so we can control them. That is working within the system and seeking to get the state legislature to pass a law that allows us to do that. But I'll give you an example of something that's more of a fight, okay? So the housing allocation that was imposed on Coronado was done through a weighted voting procedure where the city of San Diego and I believe one other city had a much larger impact with their votes than the other 12 or 13 or 14, whatever it was, cities that voted against this housing allocation. Does that seem fair? Maybe. It's being challenged in a lawsuit. It is an uphill battle to win that lawsuit. I agree. It's on appeal to the California State Supreme Court. It'll be hard to get them maybe to hear the case and to rule in our favor. But those are the kind of things I'm talking about when I talk about fighting for local control. I'm not talking about, riding in the streets and opposing what state agencies say we have to do. I'm talking about trying to work within the system and do the best we can. Okay, there are issues in regard to lot splitting and other zoning issues that the state is tried to put through. Some has gone through, but some hasn't. Why hasn't some of it gone through? Because of exactly what I'm saying I'd like to do with my legal background and my passion and my hard work, and my analytical abilities to work within the system to lobby and to help ensure that those legislators don't go too far in imposing some fairly drastic things that could really change our community. It's important to me. Thank you.
Candidate Marvin Hines.
I get up.
Thank you for the talking there, Mr. Duncan. So local control, the cities are a creature of the state. The state creates cities in California. And the cities are created primarily to do land use. So you can do zoning, so you can create a nice Orange Avenue and nice housing areas and those kinds of things to create your community. Well, in the last few decades, but particularly in the last few years, I think it's good people in Sacramento trying to solve problems that you can't solve across the state. They've passed a number of laws that are one size fits all across the state. Things like every housing unit in the state can get an accessory dwelling unit built on it by right. The city has no ability to control the size and shape of it beyond certain rules. Such as every housing lot in a single family housing area of a certain size can be split in two. So you can build two houses on it. This takes away from the cities the ability to shape their city to have high density living areas and lower density living areas and give a variety to the citizens. So this is what, when I say, I think we need to maintain local control, it's the ability to zone and build in our community the way we want our community to be shaped. Now, I'm confident that the people in the legislature think they're doing the right thing, but it's the one size fits all. You know, the community of Alpine has different zoning and different land use requirements than Coronado does. When our regional council of governments says put 918 units in Coronado, when by our current zoning only about 350 fit, then this is not making sense. This is higher levels of government not deferring to that local government. You know, the United States was founded on the idea that local government is the best place to make the decisions. And as you go up, you make decisions only that have to be made at that level. And so I think those are the challenges that we need to continue to fight against. As was mentioned, we're in an appeal to the California Supreme Court. I don't know that will win. There's 4 cities out of the 19 in the state that are making, in the county that are making that appeal, but I doubt it.
Thank you. Candidate Carrie Downey.
For the people that ask the questions, there is a difference when we talk about local control for the Coronado City Council than when the school district talks about it. I'm sorry, so many of the people with the school district left. That's a very different issue that has to do with funding, how they're getting funding, because the state divides all the funding from everybody's property tax and then sends it to the schools. So we get the same amount in our schools per person than another city that doesn't have the same property tax as we do. So that's a totally different issue. In Coronado, it's about what, as Marv pointed out, it's what control we have as the local government over the land area we're in charge of. But just don't give ourselves any delusions. The United States Navy, the federal government, owns just as much land on this island as we do. And as I pointed out, more in many ways, because some they own the fee simple underneath, and the state has only had easement rights to use it. So, and Dog Beach, everybody loves Dog Beach. That's actually Navy land. They just let us administer it for them. So understand what local control does and doesn't give us the power to do. But importantly, what it does allow us to do is treat land the way we want to. And if you want to look at the difference, look at the 100 and 200 blocks of orange. That is still orange. We have complete control of that because the state highways stop at 3rd. So the 300 block, the 400 block of orange, and all the way down are in Caltrans control. That makes it so much harder to do any improvements on those areas. That's why we haven't got the nice matching street furniture that I wanted so much on 3rd and 4th, because it's Caltrans and it would require right of way and all kinds of approval right now from Caltrans. So getting local control just gives us more control over certain aspects of our community, but not complete control. We're never going to have that. I would say the best thing that we can do is continue to push when we can, but then again, find the compromise. Just like I mentioned, we don't need to have everything from Caltrans. We just need 75% to control what we want. Same with the federal government. So we need to move forward and keep working on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll be going down to John Duncan, candidate John Duncan, with our next question, which is tying right into many of the themes you were bringing up. Do you agree with how the city has handled its response to the new housing obligation in the latest regional housing needs assessment? Should the city continue to spend taxpayer dollars fighting it? And if Coronado has to accept the increased property density, how would you deal with it? How would we plan for it?
It's a great question. It's a huge issue. I do agree that with the city trying to fight it legally, and I've stated that that is something that I would have supported and would continue to support. There This issue is, it's kind of complex, and since some people just think, okay, we got to put 1,000 houses or 918 in if this is, not overturned. But you have to look a little deeper and legally how things work. To a large extent, we're kind of talking about zoning. And so what happens with the zoning and how that's handled by council can have a huge impact on whether or not those homes are in housing units are ever actually really built. Now, I know there can be negative consequences if they're not built, but it's a fairly complex issue. And I have, as I was mentioning earlier, more than 25 years studying real estate law and representing parties and financial institutions with complex real estate issues. So it's something that I would really like to work on. It is, as Marvin and I had said earlier before that as well, a difficult case to win in court, but it just needs attention, and we need to make sure that if it is required, that the zoning is done in a proper way to mitigate the impacts as much as possible on our town. I mean, no one in this town is going to be supporting 10-story density down Orange Avenue and changing our town into something completely different, let alone the Navy might have a problem landing their planes if we did that. But actually, that's my answer. I don't have much to add other than it's something we really need to continue to work on. And yes, I support exploring legal avenues and continued legal avenues and negotiations with our neighboring towns as well that are greatly affected by it, such as Imperial Beach. Thank you.
Candidate Marvin Hines.
You have a great understatement when you say that the arena housing is a complex issue. It's very complex, and the city currently is assigned 918 units. And as I said, we looked at this current zoning. The current zoning can probably accommodate about 350 units. So it's physically impossible right now. The other thing in the arena housing numbers is you have to target low income, very low income, moderately low income. And some of those sizes require certain lots of a certain size. Coronado doesn't have multi-acre lots. And so we can never get to some of these unless, a lot of houses all went together and wanted to do this. The requirement, again, is not that we build houses in Coronado. It's that the city of Coronado provides zoning that allows for that number of houses. As was mentioned, we have an airport right next to us here. That is an impediment in going up. We're under the Coastal Commission. That's an impediment also in going up, and an impediment in changing some of the parking and things like that. And so there's a lot of challenges. The legislature was very clever when they wrote their RHNA housing laws. They did not allow court challenges of RHNA. So our challenge was not about the RHNA numbers. It was about the process that did not give us a chance to make a fair appeal and the way to vote that Mr. Duncan talked about. That appeal is at the Supreme Court. Unlikely that they will even hear it because no one wants to touch this. And so this is now back to us having to go to the legislature to get changes to this law. We're not the only city that's frustrated about this. As I said, there were 4 cities in San Diego County that were involved in this lawsuit. And as in my work with the California League of Cities, there's a lot of movement building across the state from the 487 cities that are saying, enough is enough. This is just process is just not working the way it should. You're trying to mandate numbers that can't get built, and that isn't helping solve the housing. If you really want to solve housing, give the numbers to places that you can build it.
Candidate Carrie Downey.
We weren't affected by the RHNA rules until recently. 1, because the numbers went up incredibly, but 2, in the past, we actually had extra housing because when we had the redevelopment money coming in from the state, part of that had a requirement that the city build affordable housing, which is why we have the beautiful senior housing right there on Orange. And you may not know that, but we have rehabilitated several houses on Orange that were just regular rentals the city bought and has rehabilitated them. So there are ways to get housing, but as Mark pointed out, there is not enough money for developers to do it. Our land costs too much for a square inch of dirt. So that's why we really should win the lawsuit or find relief in the legislature, because it's physically not possible. There's no developer that will come in and build here. They can't make any money doing it. I don't care how we call it. So if we're serious about it, the only way that we can get anything built is the city built it ourselves, but it wouldn't be 912 units. It wouldn't even be, 100 units, maybe like we did before, a building like we have the seniors, a senior housing there, maybe 15, maybe 20, whatever it is. So we have to figure out what can be built in our city. But let's back up for a second. It is all zoning. We put a freeze on mixed use construction after we allowed the ones on the 100 and 200 block of Orange some time ago. We wanted to see how that would work. And from everything I have seen, although we'd want to go out and do serious research on it, it worked fine. It did not have any deleterious effects we thought it might have. So that could be an option for us. And that is, by the way, exactly what the city is proposing could happen at the old Albertsons parking lot now, the Smart and Final. The owners of that, longtime Coronado owners, came to the city, wanted to turn that into mixed use. We said no. Isn't that funny? Now things changed in the state. And so we're back saying, gee, wouldn't that be a great idea? So we really do need to relook at things, but I think that may be some of the ways, because it's not just the numbers. We want affordable housing for our teachers, our firemen, other people to live here. So it'd be nice if we could do that.
Candidate Pili Aloha Astal.
Thank you, Carrie. I definitely agree with Carrie and Marv. I think when you take a look at other communities and what they've done, and there are a lot of people that are saying, hey, this might not be applicable to here. I did a lot of research on this, obviously diving in, seeing what's out there, who's doing what, where's our voice? I mean, obviously with local government, I always say it's the people plus our associations that build our institutes, and then our city manages it. But one thing I noticed, I saw like the president of the San Diego Housing Federation, he's like an advocate for Coronado putting in this, putting in all these units. And that always frustrates me. I'm like, well, why? So of course I'm trying to figure out, why is he an advocate of that? And really taking a look, and are we talking to all the important people to see if, hey, is your top-down policy working? It's not working. And we're not the only city saying this. So really taking a look while we do the appeal, while we do the legal, let's look at everything. I don't think we can just sit and wait for just the appeal to say it's not going to work. So we just really have to take a look at it.
Did any candidate want a 30-second extension?
I'll take one, please.
Let's work our way around. Go right ahead.
Thank you,
Candidate
sir.
John Duncan.
There are a few things I wanted to mention. When you think about things that don't make sense whatsoever, that in regard to the housing allocation, that all the Navy jobs count against us in the calculations, but all the land on the Navy base, whether they build new houses on it or not, do not count. That's unfair and doesn't make sense. There's other arguments that can be made when you look at zoning and the lot splitting. My understanding is historic home designation does not necessarily prevent that, but historic districts, the way I read the law, may have an effect, and we've not explored or pushed that, and it's something that I'm very interested in. Thank you.
Candidate Marvin Hines.
Something I'd like to point out is that we have about 1,100 housing units in Coronado. So if we add 918 housing units, we're making a 10% increase in the size of Coronado. Does that make any sense?
Candidate Carrie Downey.
I have been a huge supporter of our historic preservation program. I have voted every year to extend and increase the amount we budget for Mills Act. And one of the reasons is because it does protect that lot. It protects the house that we want, what we want to see on those lots. So I agree, the more we can do will help at least protect some of those, but those units can have these new ADUs on the back. There's nothing that prevents that. So I don't see that as a solution or a problem. I think it's just a way we are preserving our city, as we talked in the very beginning, the community that we want to see. And so I'd encourage doing that, but finding other ways, like I mentioned, mixed use, to try and address the need.
Candidate Pili Aloha Astal.
I'll agree with Carrie. Definitely. And when you look at it, what are we doing and what are we looking at? Again, I don't think there's just one solution or a few solutions. I think we have to take a look at everything. And what can we do? Because it is our city and we want to preserve it. Historic, congestion, everything. So we really have to do our due diligence.
All right, we're going to move to a final question, and then we can go to closing remarks, and we'll begin with candidate Marvin Hines.
One more walk.
Okay, so we got a 2-minute question, follow-up if you want. What's the one thing you think the city's doing really well, and one thing you think the city is doing really not so well?
I think the city is, well, let me start by saying, I think everyone knows that there's a lot of challenge with employees these days, and that we have a lot of people that seem to be quitting jobs and changing jobs. I think the city has a very high quality of city employee. I think we're very fortunate that we do. The council cannot claim credit for that because the council only hires 2 people of the 253 in the city. And I think we've done a good job with the city manager and the city attorney, but that they have hired good people and we have good employees. We try to pay them fairly. We don't pay them top dollar, but we try to pay them a salary that'll keep them here, and we try to give them the best equipment that we can. So I really think that using our staff and employing our staff, we're having some turnover challenges in the city, as all businesses are these days. But I think city manager friend is working through that real well. But the city's not doing so well. I don't have anything that's jumping out at me. I'm very happy with our police department. I think our community policing model is doing well. There was a comment earlier about enforcement, and I think we're trying in Coronado not to be enforcement first, to be education first. So I'm happy with that. I guess the one thing that you could point to right now is the fact that of our 3 unions, we only have a deal with one of the 3 unions at this point. The other 2 have not yet. We haven't reached a negotiating deal. So that's something that the management and the workers have to come together to get them some pay raises for this year. Unfortunately, we're not quite synced on what the right levels are for it. One union we approved 2 meetings ago. But the other 2 are still not quite in agreement. So that might be the thing that we're not doing as well as I wish we were.
Candidate Carrie Downey.
It's funny, I know you can't see this, but I had the same thing we do well that Mark did. I just called it our staff and help thereby. We have such an amazing dedicated staff that they are proactive. And I tell this story because it just warms my heart. I was going to an event at the golf course, and one of the city staffers who was in Public Works happened to be there for some other reason, watched me walk the whole length of the road that runs right in front of the golf course. And you have to walk over that area, that sidewalk, to get into the golf course shop. Well, for whatever reason, there is a lip. It's probably about 1 inch or more that runs different degrees because different sidewalk slabs, but nothing was flat. And as some of you know, my disability, my right leg doesn't lift very well. And so I was walking to try and find the flattest area so I could cross where it was flatter. And the gentleman watched me, and I didn't know who he was at first. I thought, I'm getting a little uncomfortable here, this man just sitting here watching me. And then he came over and he said, I don't want to scare you, but I was watching. Is the problem it's not flat? I said, yeah, I can't get across. He said, well, we need to do something about that. So he started taking pictures. He sent it to his boss immediately so that it could get put in the rotation for the next time they were out there. That is an example that I see all the time by staff in Coronado trying to make your city better for you. And we can't do any better. I mean, most of them are just fantastic. No matter how long they've been here, they get it, that their pride is in making your city work for you and look as well as it can. So I can't think of anything that I'm more proud of or that they do better. The second is, I think we can do a little bit better with all the new staff in teaching them the history of Coronado, because there are many times like meetings with some of the nonprofits. I've got another meeting to fix something with the 4th of July parade. They don't have the history of what our city's about and what we do and all the volunteers. So that could be better if we could have a little more staff turnover, I guess.
Thank you. Candidate Pili Aloha Astal.
I think I'm going to reiterate anywhere from our city council to our city staff to our citizens. I do, going through this process, I've always known we love our town, but I feel it immensely. Every conversation I have, every meeting I have, it's sometimes overwhelming because it makes you just feel so proud to be a part of it. And just knowing that is important things. So as we start to realize that, and how can we make sure we message that across the board? So we're working together collaboratively and knowing that we're all have the same goal. We all have this community. So that's, I think, is so important to understand. I'm going to just be that person though. I would say I'm kind of in that weird age where I'm very technology savvy, but I also am passionate about teaching our elders to use that technology and providing classes within the WIN room so people can understand it. Because you know how the kids are when we try to teach our parents, they don't want to listen to them. So just things like that. And I think what we could do better, just in an honest perspective, being an outside person coming in for these two, but is just really making sure we're unveiling everything. Are we looking at everything? Things move so fast. We're in a learner society where technology, everything is, there's so much out there. And are we really doing our due diligence? And I do believe that that's my strength, and my stamina is really just taking a look at everything and uncovering. I do have a speed reading mind. I read everything and I don't really forget much. So.
Candidate John Duncan.
Thank you so much. I have very high hopes for the new city manager and the new city clerk. I think they're both incredibly nice and their educational background is incredible. However, when I answer the question of what are we doing right or wrong, my answer is based not just on my personal feelings, but what the community tells me when I go around and meet with people in the community. There's a couple things they're struggling with. One is communication out of the city. I understand the city is going through some advancements, hopefully, in web and technology and accessibility to documents. But there have been times where it's been a struggle for me, and I'm fairly tech savvy, to get agendas for whether it's the Historical Resource Commission, the Design Review Commission, and City Council. They come out just a couple weeks before the hearings, and it's a new system, and a lot of people struggle with it. Other communication can be improved as well. This is not a crack on City Council or on the employees, but something that we need to look at to improve. I think that's the job of being on City Council is what can we do better? It doesn't mean we change everything, and we want to preserve our town, but is there something the community doesn't like that we can do better? Why not keep an open mind and try to do better? The things, also I want to make another comment on the policing. For me, reactive policing is not re-education. If you're not there, you can't educate someone. That's the point of my more proactive policing. Again, it doesn't mean harsh ticketing and macaroni necklace violations and slight issue where you get a massive ticket, but it does mean some presence on Orange Avenue sidewalks periodically or some suppression. And what does the city do good? I believe that the people have served and that the people that want to serve are very engaged and dramatically care about this city, as do the staff. This is a great place. The citizens actually care. And thank you so much for showing up tonight and having input and listening to us. Not every town and city is like this. And I think the staff and the council that has been there is like that as well. Thank you.
Would anyone like a 30-second follow-up? All right, then we will move to closing minute-and-a-half statements by the candidates. And we'll begin with John Duncan.
I don't have anything left. No. For me, I'm running because I want to add value with something that I do. I want to have a positive impact. I honestly believe I could have a very strong positive impact on City Council, or I wouldn't be running. I have other things that I do that, fortunately, the feedback that I'm getting is that I've had a very strong positive impact. And that's why I'm very glad to have people, including the president of CHA, where I serve, endorse me for City Council, where I have people that serve with me on the Civil Service Commission endorse me for City Council, people that I work with in Rotary endorse me. It's exciting. It does feel good, right? I think I can add a value into preserving our historic charm. To me, those aren't catchphrases. They're real. In my personal life, I've chosen, more than a decade ago to try to do what I personally can without political aspirations to restore homes and take them and have them historically designated. I'm on my fourth one now, and it was designated 3 weeks ago. That's on my personal level. And I think on the policy level, there's quite a bit that can be done. But I'll readily admit to you, this isn't purely an altruistic venture for me. I have 4 children. I want them to come back and be here and enjoy this. That means a lot to me personally. So I'm a hard worker, and I promise that I will do a very, very good, detailed and analytical job on all issues and communicate with this town if elected. Thank you so much.
Candidate Pili Aloha Stahl.
I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. Thank you for inviting us. This experience and learning what our community needs has been invaluable. And kind of like John, I had a lot of mentors along the way within our community, kind of encouraged me to run and give me that kind of, nudge. And it's actually way more vital that we really take a stance in what we can do in our community. I'm not saying that our current and anybody in there hasn't, but I think what offsets me is I ask the hard questions, I dive in, I look under the envelope, and I really dive to what have we done and what can we do better and what is available out there. I'm not very good at no or just waiting for something to happen. And I think that my stamina, my due diligence is really what has pushed me through. And a lot of things in my professional career, my personal, and communication is very important. Like John, being able to communicate effectively across every avenue within our community is so important today. Our kids are dealing with information overload. Our community is dealing with information overload. So if we can manage that ahead of the time, I think we really need to take a long-term look at our long-range planning, integrated water resource planning, everything. Potable water policy is so important when we won't have it. And I want our kids, our grandchildren, I want them to have a future where they look back and they're proud of us.
Candidate Carrie Downey.
I've had the privilege of serving this community on the council 3 previous times. And I've been asked, why now? What did you not do that you want to do now? Well, a couple of things. Since I left, all of my children have now graduated college, which is awesome. But I have now 5 20-something-year-olds, and I see how life is affecting them, which is different than how it affected them when they were small children and how it affects me. My oldest daughter just bought her first house with her partner, and she wants someday to come here. And we talked about it. What would this community offer somebody in their 20s? How would they do that? And so that's what motivates me. The other thing that motivates me is I mentioned at the very beginning, communication. I want our residents to be able to have better access. We upgraded our website supposedly to make it better. I agree. I think it's harder than just to find what I want, but I still can't find easily what I want. And John, it's 4 days. That's all the law says. We have to give the residents or anybody notice on the agenda. That's too short. We could make longer. We don't. So that is something, but better than just lengthening it, having it linked. So if an issue matters to you, you'll know when it's in planning, you'll know when it's in design review, you'll know when it's in the council. So that is what I think is important. And that is what I want to do for you if you return me. I greatly appreciate your support. Any other questions? Go to Carrie Downey for Coronado.com.
And candidate Marvin Hines.
Thank you all for taking your dinner hour to sit here and listen to us. I hope everyone's not starving too badly. We need council members who are dedicated, who have experience in government, and who understand our ready to provide transparency needed to ensure the public trust. 4 years ago, I promised you I would focus on public safety, underground infrastructure, and traffic planning while maintaining a financially sound city. In public safety, over the past 4 years, we hired an additional dispatcher so that you can now do 911 calls by text. We hired an emergency coordinator to better prepare our community for the disasters that may come to this island community. In underground infrastructure, we installed 2.7 miles of new wastewater lines. They don't leak, fortunately. Replaced the Case Trinidad pump station and designed and now have just led a contract for the new Parker pump station in Country Club. Our progress on undergrounding power lines has been slow, but we're moving forward on multiple projects there in coordination with SDG&E. For traffic planning and mitigation, I remain committed to seeking relinquishment of the highways from Caltrans. In city finance, the pandemic had a negative effect on our budget, but through careful cost control, the budget remains balanced. I have a lifetime of serving my fellow citizens, first as an Eagle Scout, then as a naval officer, and now in our city and our community organizations. I've served the city in multiple public commissions. I'll enter every discussion with an open mind, listen to multiple views to make the best decision. Raised by Depression-era parents, I have a conservative financial attitude and will zealously protect your city resources. Leadership experience, municipal government experience, willingness to listen, and proven ability to make good decisions in a crisis situation hopefully make me a good choice for your city council.
The professor in me demands the last word, so stop me if you've heard this one before. I get to tell it to all my audiences. You know from the ancient Greek what politics means, right? Poly, the many, ticks, blood-sucking insects. And everybody laughs. And I tell them, don't laugh at that. That's the most nefarious joke that's developed in my lifetime. When I was a kid, 80% of Americans thought government worked. Today, it's like 15%. We're living longer, we're living better, we're living more robust lives. Something's gone wrong, and people are always attacking government with the idea that if you don't have government to have your back, you're on your own. Remember, politics means turning the many for the Greeks, the poly, into the polis, the community, bringing us together so we can achieve the highest good, the good of everyone within the community. I call the people attending tonight candidates. There's no higher honorific I could give them because they are willing to go into the arena to represent their community, win or lose, and whether you vote for them or not, they deserve your respect because it's based on our candidates that our democracy works. So please give our candidates all a great round of applause. And give yourself a round of applause because you, the voters, will determine what will happen in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for a civil and informative forum. I want to thank the candidates for taking time out of their day to share their information with everybody. This has been streamed live and it will be recorded, and we will be posting the YouTube link so people who missed it can watch it. And I'd like to also thank Dr. Carl Luna for taking his time Saturday for the school board and tonight for the city council. And in the interest of transparency, I will say that the bottle of wine he's walking out of here with is one that my wife made when she plays around with her rosé wine making. So the community is gifting him a bottle of wine for his service. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you much.
More to go.
Oh, that was